got to click a button to make sure that it's not echoing, and then I start talking. Hi, Warren Whitlock here with another episode of Distributed Conversations. Today, my guest is Jeff Sheehan. Jeff is a very smart guy I've known now for 6 years.
Yes.
And we were IBM Futurists in a program that IBM put on about the future of work, and they pulled us in and had us talk about it and use our influence to promote IBM. And from that, we did a few other things together. So now Jeff's a friend. And when I wanted to do a show on the future of work, I thought, who better than to get Jeff? So welcome to Distributed Conversations.
Well, thank you, Warren. It's great to be here. Certainly the IBM days back in New York, talking about the future of work, were a great time, learned an awful lot, met an awful lot of wonderful people. Then friendships continue through to today, just like with you. And one of the things to remember, Faith Popcorn was someone that was there as a speaker, talking about the future of different things. And certainly she had been playing in this space for many, many years. So it was very, very informative, very insightful as to what she had to say and everyone else that was there.
Is that the only time you've met Faith?
Yes, correct. Yes. Yeah. Although I had been following her for years. So
I wanted to be such a fan of Faith Popcorn, but by the time we did that thing there, I was pretty much of the opinion. I'm not really sure. And then in her presentation, I kept thinking she's really good at packaging Faith Popcorn to help Fortune 100 companies, and more power to her. Come to think of it, if I had that ability, I'd be doing the same thing. But and some of her insights I wasn't so sure about. One being, she was talking about how there would be a decline of the baby boomers in the workforce, where Gen Y was going to take over. And I remember raising my hand to somewhat embarrassment, and because I said, "Wait a minute, I'm 65 in a few years. I don't intend to get out of the workforce." And looked around, there was you and one or two other gray hairs, and I realized I already was the old guy.
As I said to you earlier, I think the two of us are the grandfathers of social media, and I am a grandfather of three.
I'll take that title. That's fine.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, there aren't many older, quite honestly. Maybe if you look at the only one that actually is a mentor in that is, and I talked about this earlier today, is Tom Peters. Tom is 78, 79 years of age, and he's still going strong and still out there on a day basis. But other than that, there aren't many.
He's not in it quite like he was when he was in his very big heyday of the 90s. But, the guy went off and did something else and just wrote a book once in a while. And I'm sure he's still available for a speech if we ever get to the point we can have a speech again.
Yeah, he is.
How about you, just to make sure we got straight on where you are? Do you intend to retire and stop working?
No, not at all. I want to be Tom Peters and Warren Buffett, 90 years of age, still carrying a bag.
I'm having too much fun. Why would I stop doing this?
Correct. And I love learning. I learn something new every single day. And it's just absolutely incredible the amount of things that you have to learn.
So one of the things we know is going to happen is that we're going to live longer on average than our parents. And I'll leave it at that, and how much it is and getting the details. We'll put that on a health episode. But, we can, I came to this realization last year while exploring this about, I decided at 63, I'd start calling myself middle-aged. Before that, I was just not accepting using the term, but it was something to do with the 120 being kind of a high-end cutoff. And so the question is, how can I live to be the most healthy for however long I live? Whether that's till next week or next century, I want to stay healthy. I don't want to be a person in a nursing home, with the clock going up for an extra 10 years while I lay there in a coma. That doesn't make any sense. So that became very important to me. But then the shock was that in the next 20 years until I turn 85, I'm not worried till past that, but I could start a whole new career. I could do anything I want. And
you're absolutely right. But the thing is maintaining your health. And that's, as I told you earlier, that's why 4 or 5 times a week I try to go out and do 7.2 miles walking here on the river.
And I'm going to have to try that a little bit. So I can make it 7.2 houses down the block.
But it keeps me going, Warren. Seriously.
It does.
And if I look at my contemporaries, I used to do an awful lot of networking here in the Atlanta area, and I know people that are 80 years of age or more, and they're still out networking, still going strong. It's because they have a sense of purpose. They're doing things. They're not sitting there in their rocking chairs or whatever. When we were kids, our image of elders were people sitting there on the rocking chairs on their front porches.
Right. And you know that the reason why the Prussians in their army invented the 65-year age, it was because if you got a soldier at 65, even today, a soldier at 65, they're costing you more than they could possibly be good to you. So give them a pension, get rid of them.
Right.
And that's how they were thinking about it. And that made sense. They'd cause harm if they got onto the battlefield.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to have to help Gramps get around. Now we live a lot longer today. And I think it's going to continue to go up. I'm seeing some exciting research, but again, not trying to get off of health. I looked at it and I said, what do I do if I know I've got 20, 30 years? Do I start something new? What would it be? If I could do anything I want, because I can, what would it be? And I'm like, pretty much what I'm doing now. That may change, but I'm not looking to sit around and watch TV or do Sudoku puzzles. That was my dad's thing. Sudoku puzzles.
No, I totally
did in his 70s.
Totally agree with you because of the fact. I love what I'm doing as well. All the various things, the people I meet, the great people from throughout the world, and now over the last couple months, Warren, quite honestly, I've been actively involved in Toastmasters. Have been for 9 years, but since the pandemic, virtual meetings. I go to them several times a week. For instance, this week, Ireland. Last week was London, Ottawa, and also Dublin is another meeting in Dublin. I'm doing one, or going to be attending one, I should say, on Saturday morning in Johannesburg, South Africa. It'll be 3 a.m. in the time here, and I'm actually judging someone's speech. So I just love this stuff, a global sense of community. And I talk about people like in my speeches. My late uncle, was a retired Marine, and he used to come home on leave back when I grew up in Boston. And we'd go out in his car and go up in the hills above Boston, Quincy, where I grew up, and we'd listen to his ham radio. We'd connect with people all over the world. And you and I are both Twitterholics. And from Twitter, we have global networks that are just absolutely incredible with the people that we meet and interact with on a day-to-day basis. And now Toastmasters actually has complemented that in so many ways. It's like my ham radio was to him, in those days, both Twitter and Toastmasters, as far as global connectivity, connecting with people. I just love it.
Well, and Zoom,
absolutely.
I listened to a presentation from a guy in London who, was mentioning how much he missed coming to Vegas. And my reply was, yeah, I'd love to have you come to Vegas, because when you do, we get to hang out a bit. And most of the time, he's a guy I talk to for about 10 minutes.
Right.
But I look forward to that being part of his annual convention, because he'll be here speaking. I'm usually a speaker. And so in the speaker's lounge or there, hi, Jim, how you doing? And it's a relationship that continues. If I needed something that he was doing, I know I'd contact him and start off with a friendship. I also trust the guy enough to know I'm not going to get ripped off.
Right, correct.
Without Zoom, and conventions a little bit, and I think it'll be better in the future, we just don't get together with that person. So let's talk about what's changed, because I see a whole lot of people talking about when things get normal after COVID goes away.
They're never going to be what they were before, Warren. Yeah. That's my honest opinion. I think we're going to, I like to use the word hybrid, and maybe it's been overblown or whatever, but I see we're going to be living in a hybrid world of both virtual meetings, as we've seen here, and virtual identities, virtual ways of purchasing food and goods and services, virtual education, as you indicated. Although with the combination of face-to-face and actually going to places physically. That's not going to disappear because you want that sense of community. You want the sense of relationships with individuals in real life. I'm sorry. I mean, it's
Yes.
great seeing you here now, but I can tell you, you and I, if we have lunch or dinner or whatever together, it's so much better. It is like that with everyone.
Food.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think that's, and so I long for that. That'll be great. I usually travel once or twice a month, mostly because I can, not because a client requires me to be someplace. I can't remember when the last time that actually happened. I'll go to visit a client, but they're virtual. And it's been that way for, the last 20 years. I've been able to do that. And actually, I had my brick and mortar business. We were selling stuff across the United States and talking to people by email and phone. And we had relationships with people that we never saw. And so it's not a totally new idea that we're going to use different ways to connect with people. But of course, if somebody is coming to Vegas and there's somebody I know and they say, let's get together, I'm jumping to do that because one, I get out of the house. And probably there's food involved, and get to see something different. I mean, one of the greatest joys here is people say, how can you stand to live in Vegas with all those lights and the casinos and everything? I don't. I'm coming down here and see you, and I'm home sleeping in the suburbs. I don't stay in those hotels. But I'm longing for that to come back because not that I get a big kick out of going into a casino per se, but I love seeing the people. What I really miss is breakfast with other local business people and things like that. And I go to network events only because it was a good chance to meet some other people and different people. Because the kind of people that go to local networking events are the realtor and insurance salesman, somebody with, and they're going to tell you about their latest MLM, or my favorite is, we're coming out with a magazine. Okay, it's 2012. Coming out with a brand new magazine. What have you missed? Okay, fine. But I love to talk to them and hear about what they're trying to do. Actually, their launches they launch not episode, what do you call it? Issue of the magazine. And so there was one that was they were Las Vegas, business oriented, and every time a magazine came out, they'd launch it. Get people together, invite networking groups to combine to a super networking group, give out their magazine. I guess they were then they weren't selling subscriptions, so they must be at that point selling advertising. Now, I still think that's a dumb business idea. I'm on record with that, but it was somebody trying something different, and that was interesting. One time I was in the mood to talk about leads. And so I introduced myself at every person I met as, I help people get leads the most cost-effective way possible. And that was when they asked what I did. Instead of what I normally say, I just said that. I had 3 people hanging on my every word for 15 minutes about, can you do this? Can you get together? I need more people that are blah, blah, blah for my, sell this, blah, blah, blah. I'm going like, but yeah, I don't think I want you as a client, but yeah, that was just so much fun, the energy of doing something different. But I think we're going to have a whole lot more and more global. So I think we're at the point now where we can do business with somebody that's halfway around the world and it doesn't really matter.
Well, I was in a meeting, Warren, a couple weeks ago, 2 different meetings, 2 networking meetings. There was one woman I connected, she was in Ljubljana, Slovenia. And so I connected with her and have had some dialogue subsequent to that. There was also one where she was from Sydney, Australia. And both of these individuals were leading authorities in their respective fields. It was just fascinating being able to connect with these people because of the virtual connection. Now, hopefully someday you'll meet these individuals in person, but nevertheless, this started as the virtual world has started as a catalyst for developing.
I just did a promo with Huawei, helping them promote things, and the group of people, they had a debate over whether Huawei was going to be taken down by the US's action, was what they were billing it as. And there were 4 of us on there. One was in Hungary. One was in Canada. There was me. And where was the 4th one? I can't recall. Asia. And the thing is, the other 3 people had experience living in China. I didn't. And so totally different view of the world than me. It's, first of all, I checked out Huawei. Most of the US telcos are not doing business with them anyway. So whether or not we have the embargo, to me, like, okay, I'm against it, but whatever.
Right.
I'm not going to affect the US. But when you start talking about where there's Huawei phones, like the guy from Australia, the Huawei phone, I'm talking to these people in this chat. I'm just like, it's a completely different outlook they have on life, because they just, in China, they don't use Google and Twitter and Facebook. It's a different way of looking at things. And I think we got to get more together. And most of the strife that we see right now, I'm now watching a documentary on 1968 because I really wanted to, it's not that I wanted to learn something so much as I wanted to get in the mode of thinking about it, like what led up to Robert Kennedy being shot,
right,
to, Martin Luther King was shot, and those things. And I kept singing that song, Abraham, Martin,
yeah,
and John. Yeah,
John,
that song.
correct.
We don't hear much anymore, but that kept going in my head, and so that was interesting. And then, but yeah, the riots and the things leading up to strife, the people saying that the civil rights happened in '65, but things have not changed. It's the same as it's always been. And here it is 52 years later, and they're saying the same things, the same kind of problems and like that. So I'm halfway through it. So I may do a post when I get it done. And
really that's good. Interesting.
You want to get out and get exposed to different kind of things, which I think this is perfect for. But that's you and me, the old guys in the more or less consulting type of business, speakers or doing whatever, authors. What about the guy that's working in a the old 9 to 5, the IBM employee? Where I went to Austin, by the way.
Did you? Yeah.
I went by myself. Yeah. They flew me to Boston for something, and I spent half a day in Boston, and they put me up and bought my ticket. And I said, instead of sending me back to Vegas, send me to Austin, because there was supposed to be a conference. By the way, it didn't happen. But so I was in Austin for the day. And so I set up a go out and tour IBM, where the people running things for us were. Fascinating. First of all, the person back then, this is like 2015, the person setting up the meeting for Boston was working out of the Dallas office, but her home was in Virginia, and that's where she spent most of the time.
Right.
So she set the whole thing up from Virginia as an employee of Dallas, working on Boston in a tour. Boston was just one of the locations. And so that's kind of mind blowing. So I get to the IBM facility, we go to lunch, and we come back. And so my local friend, and then two of the people, Amy and whoever Amy's boss was,
right.
Yeah, the other woman. And we go in there, and they show me the third floor. Half of the floor was their department, and most of the desks were empty on a Wednesday afternoon. And it was Amy and Amber.
Yes, correct.
And so I said to Amber, I said, that's kind of like different than what I'd always pictured a big office being, although I'd heard about IBM and the remote workers with the setting up the trip that got me there. So I knew that was what was happening. And she says, yeah, I'd kind of like to get the people to come in once a week and have a meeting. And we're thinking of requiring them to be here on a certain day every week. Like, okay. And seriously, there's resistance to doing that still. But,
well, Warren, prior to the pandemic, they were trying to, in the case of IBM, they were doing away with people working remotely. They wanted people to go into the offices, and they booked like 4 or 5 locations in the U.S. But now I think that given what has transpired, that has totally changed. And now I think not only IBM, but everyone needs to adopt that smart working concept. And
so
how do they apply that?
Get out of this that are going to be on the rise? Because I look to invest in trends. The trend that's happening is one, there's going to be a lot less people needing to be in the downtown office.
Without question.
So that's good for suburbs. That's also good for totally remote. Because I met somebody once that were doing video projects, making video on a Hollywood level. They were people that had spent most of their careers in LA, and as a couple, and they'd moved to some place that was 4 hours out of Salt Lake City and up the Rockies someplace, and someplace I'd never heard of. Small town. I had good internet, or at least they did when I talked to them. And they said they were up there for 18 months until the boss of the project they were working on said, I need you here tomorrow morning. They said, well, we can get there tomorrow. It's going to take a little while. 18 months, and he figured out he couldn't call these people into the office. When they were in LA, he could, right? And when he found out, he was excited. They were reluctant to tell him. But when he found out, it's other people in the office knew. When they found out, it was like, wow, that's pretty cool. You get to live where you want to live. And I think a lot of that was going to happen. The idea of I'm not going to go see my big client, I'm going to have to talk to him on Zoom, is a new idea. A year ago, you'd still say, we need to have this meeting. I just watched Plane, Trains, and Automobiles.
Oh, geez.
Thanksgiving, right? And that starts off with a meeting that's, hilarious for not what was intended in the meeting, or in the movie. It's hilarious that the guy is in New York City the Tuesday before Thanksgiving and worried about getting home before whatever the family was doing.
Excuse me. Sorry. Yes.
And that starts out the whole Plane, Trains, and Automobile story. And you're like, that wouldn't happen today. This year it couldn't happen.
No.
But you wouldn't allow somebody to just roll on like that, where the guy is looking at the art boards for hours while he just keeps high-paid people sitting there. Today, if I go to a meeting and it's a Zoom meeting, I got a client where we do that. And if it's a Zoom meeting and they're not getting to anything, I keep thinking, you got 10 people on this call, and you're paying us whatever per hour to be here, and you kept us waiting for 10 minutes. Wow, that's a real cost. I thought the same thing was when it was a physical meeting. This company's all virtual. Everything I do now is all virtual, so it's not a change for me. But I think it's going to change. The other thing I see coming is these restaurants closing down. People still want to be in the restaurant business. So the future of opening a restaurant is going to be more like a catering place. In fact, lots of caterers want to open up restaurants, and restaurants like to have a catering division. But we're going to see that it be more the norm. There's the licensing on it and what location you are in, everything like that is limited to food trucks have been doing the same kind of trend. Somebody could do catering in a food truck, and then when they're not there, they just don't send the truck out, and everything's okay. I think we're going to see a lot more flexibility in what it takes to be in the food service business.
And I think what you see is companies like Dash, and Dash is about to go public. Okay, I think the IPO is they've registered for the IPO, but they will be the actual backbone of that whole area. Is all these whether it's catering companies or restaurants, they rely on Dash to help facilitate that for them, the connectivity with the customers, I believe, because so they don't have to manage things. All they do is they cook the food and then outsource all this other functionality.
I was looking how to, and I've seen several examples of people doing that with and without the delivery service. Green meals in one place, and you have to subscribe to them. The messenger brings them around, and it's been the company's messenger so far. But when we disconnect the delivery from the production of the food, then all of a sudden the whole idea of what it means to go out to a restaurant changes. I still want to go out to a restaurant and have a meal with you, but if not, then we'll meet someplace and we'll have food brought in. And if not, maybe next time you and I get together, we'll both order a meal and eat it together. Who knows what the future's going to be.
But what I see them doing is like a Dash. They're going to Uberize the food service delivery area.
Right.
So they'll come up with
thing. Yeah, it'll be the same thing for getting the food made.
Correct.
That like now there are places. I'm thinking about the old paradigm when I worked at a place that had a union shop in it. That the union contract called for 5 people would show up every day, but if they had done some of the production with modern ways, this was typesetting. The old men with the big typesetting machine. They had to be big guys to run the machine. They were so massive, and they'd show up every day. And X number of them got a job, regardless of whether or not the thing was already typeset. and because there were union rules, so that they got the job. But they also have 4 to 8 people show up for what averaged to be 5 jobs, and that was just part of how you got the job. It's the same as a Home Depot parking lot where you don't know who's going to be out there on a given day, but you can hire somebody. But when we Uberize those things, and we now have staffing that makes some sense, and we'll work out the stuff. The evils of Uber are maybe they're taking too much for it, or whatever. All that stuff's going to be, in competition, is going to get down to where you just expect, if you want to order something, you can order online and it'll show up for a reasonable fixed price. And because we know restaurants make enough money that they could build in the delivery with it. It's just not been in their model, because now they've got to have this restaurant that's closed and then try to make money off of the deliveries on the side. But those will be rethought in the next few years.
Well, the other thing is the recipes, and actually the food itself is the IP of the restaurant. So
Right.
I think you'll see, my feeling is you'll probably see centralized kitchens in an area,
Right.
and the food will be prepared according to the recipes of that or the restaurant, and then it'll ship out from that centralized kitchen. Okay, through Dash.
The chef will get paid for his IP on every time the recipe's used. That's pretty cool.
Right. So something like that. And restaurants themselves will be small, intimate places that are.
So bottom line, we're going to see more of the trends we've been watching for decades,
right,
happening faster. I like to use things like a dry cleaner in my examples of teaching people how business will change, and how I want when I want my suit right before they close, or right after they close and they're nice to me. That's because it's important. I'm going to the presentation. Obviously not now, but back then I'd use that, and I'd say I want them to do everything they can. But next week when I drop off the dry cleaning, I don't want them to bug me and say your stuff is ready. Oh, your stuff was ready yesterday. You didn't come and pick it up. I don't want to hear from my dry cleaner. If I don't take anything in, I don't want to hear from them. Maybe if there was a nice ping, but that's on that level, they never advertise that way. But I want to have a relationship there and know I can get something. But meanwhile, I'd much rather have, if I needed dry cleaning, put it in my closet for me. I'll pay for that service. Come and get what needs dry cleaning, put it back, kind of like it when you're at a hotel, and do it at some kind of reasonable price that you can, because you've set up the whole system to take care of people that way. So rethinking that I think we get past a lot of that resistance. We get resistance to big offices, and ultimately technology moves along faster. All the kinds of things I normally talk about on this channel with, AI and nanotechnology and other fun stuff.
Totally agree with you. And the other thing, what are the implications, though, if you look at the cities? What's actually going to happen? All these huge office buildings and that.
Yeah, I think some of the
restaurants in the cities and that.
Yeah, I think some of the hyperbole goes away. That places renting for $10,000 a square foot because it's in the right district. Maybe it goes down and they only get 5,000, but it's still like 100 times more than you would get if it was a mile away.
Correct.
So I think we're still going to have that Class A property doing what they do. But yeah, in any transitions, there's people that suffer. But hey, we're all suffering now. We need to know that in the future, it's just we're reshuffling things a bit. And
well, the other thing is, we talked earlier about education before we actually started this session. Mm-hmm. And what are the implications on education going to be? And one of the things that I see, Warren, is is measurement. How do you ensure that these kids are getting the value out of the education? You're going to have to measure that, particularly with the hybrid model, because of the fact, what is the impact on their personalities? What is the impact on, are they going to be suffering more from depression?
It's going to be, we're going to come up with some innovations that instead of going with the school system as envisioned by Horace Mann in 1835 to teach people to read when they're coming off the farms to work in the plants. Now we've got to take a look and how are we doing this? I like to say, I don't care that my grandchild's brain is being wired differently. I get that same emotion when I watch her grab grandma's phone and stay on it for an hour watching YouTube, and she's 2 years old.
Right.
Drives me crazy. And then I started thinking about it, and I'm going wait a minute, this is her world. There's going to be a screen on someplace all the time. And the other what we call normal in relationships, she's going to have to learn with that being there. And I think better. I hope better. I mean, but I gave up at trying to grab the phone from her. She comes to stay here, and Grandma falls asleep, and she's in my bed playing with the iPhone. And I'm going like, I don't have that relationship with the 2-year-old that I could grab the iPhone and not wake up Grandma from the crying. So I decided to take the lazy way out. But I think that actually that's what they're going to be like. It's going to be a different kind of a thought process. My brain is definitely rewired. I don't think the same way I thought in 1981 when I first got online or first started using the computer just before that. I think differently. I think about solving the problem using the tools that I have. But I can still say I'm the same person, same personality. I'm just, my life's been enriched with those tools.
So what was your first online experience with a BBS or what?
Yeah, it was pre-BBS. It was actually a PDP-11, and
okay.
Somebody wanted to buy an ad for their time sharing with the PDP-11 to teach people to use terminals.
Right.
So I met with him and told him he was crazy, and it was a short-lived campaign. But we became friends from that, and he actually did run a few ads. But and then he found out people weren't interested in that. But he had set up something for the college, community college, and the county schools, something like that. And so he had a lot of extra time. And he made a deal that he gave me a better modem than I had for my VIC-20. I had to upgrade because that was 22 characters across. And we got on and we managed our sales accounts there. Something I've always believed in is the relationships more important than trying to accumulate a big list of something.
Right.
And we were able to do that. I was able to, then it made me sales manager, and I was able to project how much advertising we had booked for the next 3 months, which was a paper and pen exercise, quite time consuming. And I automated it, got it onto a spreadsheet by 81, 82. And that's the way I was thinking about things. But I'd already been online. That one went on for a year or two. And then the BBSs. And in 1984, I got on the internet. And I got a prompt.
Was that with CompuServe or what was it?
No, I've been on CompuServe, but it was, I got a prompt on a BBS that says, go out here and attach the internet. And I started typing things. And I'd read an article in Byte magazine that said, one bad computer could bring down the whole internet. And so that's how, I wasn't even thinking LANs and networking at all. I was just thinking like, oh no, I've attached this. What can I do? Well, I didn't do any damage. I was on for 10 minutes. And the next time I was actually on the internet was 10 years later. But I could say I was on in 84.
Well, I worked in the electronics industry for many, many years. And my first experience was actually the whole with Apple and everything else in 1981, 1982. I used to go out to Silicon Valley and call on them Atari, Hewlett Packard. It was a company called PH Components. They actually manufactured the first PCs out there in Silicon Valley.
Right.
And
it
was just
hearing of them. I don't know anything about
it was just fascinating. And then after I left Marauder, I did something else for a short period of time. Then went back to the ad agency. And with that, I got involved with the media side of the business too. Met people such as Jim Seymour, the late Jim Seymour.
Oh, yeah.
John Dvorak. John Dvorak's still out there. John's still going for very strong in Silicon Valley. But a phenomenal integration or immersion in this whole technology sector, the PCs and everything, which is carried through to this day with my quest for knowledge and quest for what's going to happen in the future. Because I was there at the forefront of so many things going on.
We're futurists. We're looking about what's coming. It's a different mindset. Instead of dragging our feet and saying, at our age, oh, I don't understand that. I don't want to use it. No, it's crazy. There's people our age that will say they won't use email still today.
I do, Warren, every time I talk on thought leadership and that, one of the things I mention is, and you remember this, what was the movie, The Graduate, okay?
Yeah.
And there was one, pardon?
Plastics,
okay?
One word, plastics.
One word. So every time I get up and I talk, I said one word. Everyone in this audience here that's thinking about their future, think of the word plastics. What is the one word that resonates or actually equates to what plastics were in the 60s? We all know what plastics did, okay? And how they've become such an integral part, although also nefarious part of society in so many
Right.
ways. But think of what is the next plastics. In the
Right.
80s, it was the PC industry that created so many other industries that really
Change their way of
helped
life.
change the way of life and grew the economy
Yeah.
exponentially.
And it's, think about it, is anything going to happen in the next 10 years that is going to change things as much as the iPhone did? Well, yeah, it's going to happen. I don't necessarily know what it is, but we need to be looking for those things. When I say like, well, my last one I had to get accustomed was TikTok.
Right.
You know, I have a TikTok account. I haven't made any videos yet. And usually a social platform, I end up getting an audience just because of the large Twitter audience. And though I came around and I just heard about a project where a guy was making a TikTok video after having a call like this.
Just for a minute out here, I have to shut the close the blind if you don't mind. Okay, apologize.
Great.
There we go. Much better. I feel like a more human individual.
I was just thinking we've kind of reached the end of my time, and I've got I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye.
Oh, no, I appreciate that very much. But you would not believe what a pleasure this is to get together again. We have to do it in real life luncheon, though, either here